Hello, this is Christine Samara. I'm your psych mate and of course your future psychologist. So, welcome back to my channel. Char, joke lang. Last episode we talked about the introduction to the theories of personality and I've used their Feist and Feist as my reference. So this time we're going to use the same reference and we're going to talk about the levels of mental life of Sigmund Freud. So, before that, let's have a glimpse first of the psychodynamic theories that we have. So we have our list here. You can see Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, Carl Jung, Melanie Klein, Karen Horney, Erich Fromm, Harry Sullivan, and Erik Erikson. Okay. So let me tell you the story of a young ambitious physician and a potion. So this young man came to believe that he had discovered a drug that had all sorts of wonderful properties. This drug used to be effective to energize soldiers suffering from near exhaustion, so this young ambitious physician decided to try it on patients, colleagues, and friends. If this drug worked as he expected, he might gain the fame to which he aspired. The drug has been found out to be effective in heart disease, addiction to alcohol and morphine, and several other psychological and physiological problems. So this doctor, or the young ambitious physician, tried it on himself. Surprisingly, he was quite pleased with the results. So the drug has therapeutic effect on his serious depression. He even told his fiancée that time that he would give her small amounts of the drug to make her strong and to help her gain weight. To cut the story short, he delayed the completion of this experiment to see his fiancée. During that visit, a colleague and not this ambitious young physician, has completed the experiments. So, it's not him who has published the results, and it was not him who has gained the recognition. So, the drug was cocaine, and that young doctor was Sigmund Freud. Well, I would definitely agree with Feist and Feist though. So that Freud has become more associated with psychoanalysis. We know him as the father of psychoanalysis. We know him by psychoanalysis and not by the drug. So, it's still better that he became the most famous of all the personality theorists than to be tied with the drug cocaine. So he was that young doctor. Yeah. So let's get to know some facts about Freud. So, well, as you know already, he's the father of psychoanalysis, as I have mentioned a while ago. He was born on March 6, 1856. He relied more on deductive reasoning than on rigorous research methods. So, as I've said again on the first episode, I have mentioned that the early personality theorists have used more on, or has relied more on, clinical observations. So he made observations subjectively and relatively small sample of patients. So he did not quantify his data nor make observations under controlled conditions. So he utilized the case study method or approach almost exclusively. So he was given a Tripp scholarship by the University of Vienna in 1885, and he made the decision to undertake research in Paris under renowned neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot, or how do you say that correctly? So he spent 4 months working with Charcot, who taught him the hypnotic method for managing hysteria. So, hysteria is a condition generally marked by paralysis or the incorrect functioning of specific body parts. Through hypnosis, Freud became convinced of a psychogenic and sexual origin of hysterical symptoms. While still a medical student, Freud met Joseph Breuer, and Breuer is a well-known Viennese physician and developed a personal friendship with him. So they developed a personal or friendly relationship. So Breuer taught Freud about catharsis this time. So catharsis, as you know, is the process of removing hysterical symptoms through talking them out, and then later discovered the free association technique, which soon replaced hypnosis as his principal therapeutic technique. So there came a time that there have been disagreements between the notions of Breuer and Freud. So for one, Breuer did not agree that the childhood experiences or the childhood sexual experiences were the source of the adult hysteria. Furthermore, Breuer agreed with Freud to publish the studies on hysteria with some reluctance. So in this book, Freud introduced the term psychical analysis, which later became the concept of the psychoanalysis. But at about the time that the Studies on Hysteria book was published, Freud and Breuer had a professional disagreement and became estranged personally. So friend then turned to another friend. Alright, so this time, Freud is kinda obsessed with fame and recognition. Well, as I have told you the story about the drug cocaine. So at that time, he has been already obsessed about getting famous, about recognition. So he's kinda obsessed, and when he was middle-aged and have not yet achieved this, there was a point where he becomes so disappointed. But of course, there's a point where he believed with another breakthrough, with his discovery of that neurosis, okay, that have their etiology in child seduction by a parent. This is his seduction theory that he later abandoned for some reasons that we can see here. For one, it had not enabled him to treat even a single patient. Another is that the great number of fathers would be accused of sexual perversion. Another is that unconscious mind cannot distinguish reality from fiction. And lastly, the unconscious memories of psychotic patients almost never revealed early childhood sexual experiences. So that is why he abandoned this seduction theory. So an author in the name of Henry Ellenberger described this period in Freud's life as a time of creative illness. So creative illness is a condition characterized by depression, by neurosis, psychosomatic ailments, and intense preoccupation with some form of creative activity. So at midlife, Freud has suffered from self-doubts, depression, and obsession with his own death. Okay, despite these difficulties, Freud still managed to complete some of his greatest works. Well, you can see here, it includes the interpretation of dreams, on dreams, psychopathology of everyday sex, 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, jokes and the relation to the unconscious, and many more. Okay, and another additional information before we discuss the levels of mental life is that in 1902, Freud invited a small group of somewhat younger Viennese physicians to meet in his home to discuss psychological issues. So this organization is called the Wednesday Psychological Society, which is later called as the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society, whose members are, of course, we have Freud, Adler, Steckel, Kahane, and Reitler. Later on, Carl Jung became a member of this organization, and he was regarded as the crown prince or the man of the future. However, he, like Adler and Steckel before him, eventually quarreled bitterly with Freud and left the psychoanalytic movement. Yeah, okay, so you can see Freud has problems with the other theories that we have been mentioning, that with other important people that you already know. Okay, so have you also wondered about these questions? Are people's behavior determined by forces over which they have no control, or can people choose to be what they wish to be? Can behavior be partially free and partially determined at the same time? Okay, so these are actually some of the questions that we have when we talk about the dimensions of the concept of humanity that we have on our first episode. So let's now talk about the levels of mental life. So to Freud, mental life is divided into two levels. We have the unconscious and the conscious. But you can see in the photo actually that I have used, we have the term preconscious as well, and we're going to learn about that too later. Okay, so the unconscious in turn has two different levels, the unconscious proper and the preconscious. Yeah. Okay, so we may be aware of our outward acts, but we frequently are not aware of the mental processes that go on behind the scenes. You know, when we're doing something, sometimes we got shocked. Why did we do that? You know, sometimes it happens to us. So this explains that we have actions wherein sometimes we are not aware of the reasons behind these actions. Alright, so another example, just to be clear with you, is, for example, you like someone. So you may like someone, but you cannot fully understand or explain the reason behind the attractions. Behind the attraction, why do you like this person? Something like that. Okay, so it happens. So, it is. Kayo ba? May gusto ba kayo? Na-explain nyo ba? Bakit nyo gusto yung taong to? Or, like, bakit ba mahal na mahal yung isang tao kahit hindi kayo gusto? Char! Okay. So, yeah. Alright, let's continue. So, the unconscious encompasses all of our unconscious drives, urges, instincts, which motivate majority of our words, feelings, and behaviors. You know, in Tagalog, unconscious, hindi natin alam, hindi tayo aware. Kumpara sa conscious, di ba, aware tayo. Alam natin kung ano yung ginagawa natin, alam natin kung ano yung reason behind our action, yun yung conscious. Pag unconscious, what is happening? What's the reason behind this? Okay. So, Feist and Feist have written that unconscious is the explanation behind our dreams. Slips of the tongue. Yung bigla-biglang nag-uusap tayo, tapos bigla akong may masasabi na, hala, ba't ko nasabi yun? Diba? O kaya, kumbaga may seryoso yung usapan, tapos bigla mong may nasabi kang hindi mo dapat nasabi, slips of the tongue, di ba? So, another is, of course, certain kinds of forgetting or yung mga repression. So, these things, again, dreams, slips of the tongue, repression are all, it's the unconscious, okay? It's the work of unconscious according to Feist and Feist. So, dreams serve as a particularly rich source of unconscious material. Yan. Di ba nagtataka tayo minsan? May mga content yung panaginip natin na kumbaga taon hindi man natin kilala, or kumbaga mga panaginip na weird, 'di ba? Na hindi natin alam bakit natin napapanaginipan yun, something like that. So, it's a rich source of unconscious material. So, for example, let's have Freud. So, Freud felt that childhood events may manifest themselves in adult dreams, even if the dreamer had no conscious remembrance of them. So, it can happen. So, ang sabi dito ni Vice and Vice, yung dreams natin, di ba? Sometimes, it can be our early experiences in life. Di ba? Na hindi natin maalala, nangyari pala. Okay, so unconscious processes frequently approach consciousness. Yes, but only after some disguise or some transformation. So when the unconscious processes reach the consciousness, it is not already in its original form. So to understand this, let's talk about what Freud employed, no? So he employed an analogy of a guardian or censor. Okay, restricting road between the unconscious and pre-conscious. Alright, so there is a guard that prevents anxiety-inducing memories from accessing consciousness. So those events or experiences in the past that are threatening to us, that produces stress, worry, anxiety, is being guarded for it to avoid expressing in the consciousness. Alright, so in order to access the awareness, the consciousness level of the mind, these unconscious images, as I've said, must be disguised first. Okay, so it must slip past the primary sensor, and then they must avoid a final sensor that monitors the passageway between the pre-conscious and the conscious. Okay. When these memories enter our conscious mind, they are no longer the original form. Okay, we can no longer recognize them for what they really are. So, these threatening events or experiences that we have, when it reach the conscious mind, is now pleasant. It's not threatening now. Okay, it doesn't produce anxiety already. Okay, because they are already transformed. Okay, so for example, let's have the sexual and violent activities that some people may have experienced in the past. So these memories, these events are most of the time punished or suppressed. Okay, they are suppressed because they include strong sexual or aggressive elements. And these suppression frequently generate emotions of worry, and it also produces anxiety, which can in turn encourages repression or some kind of forgetting, okay, which is the driving force of undesirable anxiety-ridden experiences as a defense against the agony of that anxiety. However, we must take note that not all unconscious processes come from repression of childhood events. Okay? So, for Freud, he felt that a component of our unconscious drives actually also derives from the experiences of our early ancestors. So, these experiences of our early ancestors have been passed on to us through hundreds of generations of repetition. So, for Freud, he referred our phylogenetic endowment as these inherited unconscious images. Alright, so this is quite close to Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious. Okay, so he used this concept to explain the Oedipus complex and the castration anxiety. Alright, so unconscious drives can manifest in consciousness, again, because only after certain transformations. Alright, so for example, a person's erotic or hostile urges can be expressed by teasing. or by making jokes with another person. So let's imagine there are two persons, no? So the original drive is disguised and hidden from both persons' conscious minds. Now imagine two persons. So the first person's unconscious has had a direct influence or effect on the second person's unconscious. Can you believe that? Okay, so both person get some satisfaction from teasing or joking, but they are neither aware of the underlying motive of those jokes. Okay, so thus, the unconscious mind of one person can communicate with the unconscious mind of the another without either person being aware of what is happening, being aware of the process. Alright, of course, we must remember that unconscious does not imply being inactive or being inert, okay? So, forces in the unconscious continually strive to be conscious. Alright, so some of them succeed, some of them not, okay? And you must also note that unconscious notions can and do motivate people. So some of the motives are from unconscious. Okay, for example, we have a father and a son. So let's say that the son hates his father, but then he was not aware of that. So it can be expressed by showing exaggerated display of affection and flattery. Okay, because he's disguising that one. Okay, so because the disguise must effectively deceive the person, it frequently takes the opposite shape of the original feelings, although it is always overdone. Alright? Okay, so that's the unconscious. Now let's talk about the pre-conscious level of the mind. And the pre-conscious level of the mind contains all those elements that are not conscious but can become conscious either quite readily or with some difficulty. Okay, for instance, let's have an example. So you made a list of the things that you're going to buy when you go to the grocery. Unfortunately, you forgot to bring with you the list when you are shopping already. So this time, you have a trouble remembering which ones to buy until you see a sign that makes you remember of the things you're going to buy. For example, there is a sign that says, beef is on sale today, then boom, you remember you're going to buy meat. Okay, so that's the pre-conscious level of the mind. So it can become conscious quite readily, but for some people it can it can be also difficult to access the consciousness. Okay, so the consciousness or the contents of the pre-conscious came from two sources. Okay, the first one is the conscious perception, and the other one is from the unconscious. Alright, so for the conscious perception, what a person experiences are only conscious for a brief moment, and then it quickly slips into the pre-conscious when the focus of attention moves to another idea. These concepts, which shifts effortlessly between conscious and pre-conscious, are largely anxiety-free. Alright, let's talk about unconscious as the second source of pre-conscious pictures or images. Freud felt that ideas could get past the alert sensor and enter the unconscious in disguise. Some of these images never become conscious. However, some of these images never become conscious because if we recognize them as unconscious derivatives, then we would experience heightened level of anxiety or heightened levels of worry, which can trigger the final sensor to repress these anxiety-loaded images. Okay, forcing them back to the unconscious. Alright. Mm. Again, as I've said a while ago, some of the images from the unconscious can enter consciousness only after some transformations, only after it has been the contents or the true nature of those images or processes have been successfully concealed through the dreams or through the sleep of the tongue. Alright, in psychoanalytic thought, consciousness plays actually a small role. So, as we know, consciousness refers to the mental aspects that are present at any given time. And sure, it is the sole level of mental life that is directly open to us. We are aware of it. Alam natin kung ano yung nangyayari. We are conscious of it. So, ideas can enter awareness in two ways. So it's the same with the pre-conscious. From the pre-conscious, we have the consciousness perception and the unconscious as its sources. For the consciousness, we also have two. The first one, again, comes from the perceptual conscious system. And the other one is from the conscious materials from within the mental structure. Perceptual conscious system consists of what we observe through our sense organs. So if it's not too scary, it can enter the consciousness. The other source, of course, is the conscious materials that comes from within the mental structure, and it is comprised of non-threatening concepts from the pre-conscious as well as worrying but well-disguised images or processes from the unconscious. Okay, now let's talk again about the analogy that Freud made just to clarify what it means. Of course, it's kind of obvious. Right, so the figures that we can see here are the people in the entrance hall reflect the unconscious images. This one. And the small reception room represents the unconscious, and its inhabitants are the pre-conscious ideas. This is the small reception room. Alright, and then the people in the reception area or the pre-conscious may or may not see the significant guest. This one. This is the significant guest, who of course represents the eye of consciousness. And the chief censor, who monitors the threshold between the two rooms, is the doorkeeper, as represented by this man. Okay, and then unconscious images are kept from becoming pre-conscious, while pre-conscious images are made unconscious by throwing them back. And then the ultimate filter here is the screen, this one. Okay, so the screen protects the important guest, the eye of the consciousness, and it keeps many, but not all, pre-conscious elements from reaching consciousness. So it's what we're saying. So those experiences that produces anxiety or are worrying tends to be disguised or transformed in other form before it gains access to the consciousness. Alright, so this is the reference. So I've used Feist and Feist, and that is the levels of mental life. And for the next topic, we're going to talk about the provinces of the mind. Alright, thank you so much.